I didn't know that he was a serial killer and had killed other people.
And I don't remember that ever getting pulled up. We got a Riley little baby running about.
I have the corgi. He's real cute, so you're going to hear his paws tapping on the floor from time to time.
Well, we were supposed to have a band at my house today, which is why we're at Ty's house today.
Achoo! Good boy! Achoo! Good boy, yeah.
Okay, so this one I've actually been... Ooh, I'm hitting puberty.
Ooh, yeah, you
Finally.
are. Ooh, your voice is cracking and everything, yeah.
It's taken a real long time, but I'm finally here. Ty and I have been talking about, no, I'm not going to play ball with you. It's not happening. Okay, so Ty and I have been talking about there's a queer ghost hunting group in Ohio for a really long time. Actually, I'm pretty sure it was before we even decided to do this. I've actually been looking up this particular place, but I haven't found a ton of things on it until recently. Hooray. But this is what they cover in their first season. It's a YouTube-based reality show on all of the spectrum of queer people.
Yeah, it's really eclectic.
Mm-hmm. The Collingwood Arts Center is Toledo, Ohio's largest and oldest structure. It has 6 floors and a high-pitched tile roof brick building with an attic and basements, because of course it has an attic and basements. It is described as a blend of Gothic and Romanesque styles, also known as Flemish Gothic.
Ooh, that's a fun term.
Mm-hmm. It was designed by architect E.O. Wallace. This is a huge space. It's made up of a lot of different buildings. One of the first ones that was there was built essentially as a humongous sort of mansion, and then the rest of it was built around it by E.O. Wallace. It's a 113,000 square foot rectangular building, and that's one of the buildings.
What? So that's like 30 tiny mansions all stuffed together, but as one building.
And then there's like 4 other buildings. It was opened in 1905 as the teaching convent for nuns in the Ursuline Order of the Sacred Heart.
Okay.
It became several different things after that. It became the Mary Manse College, and then eventually it became a retirement home for the nuns that had lived in one of the mansions on the property. It's considered an arts center now because in 1985, after it sat vacant for a while, they repurposed it as an artistic center.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
They, for a while, were providing artists with studio space as well as some places to stay on like lower rent scales. When I looked at it, I was like, man, I'm moving out of my house. I'm moving in here.
Right.
Right. But I saw something that in 2014, they stopped allowing people to stay there just because it's not really suitable for living. Yeah. So whether or not that's true, I don't live in Ohio.
I would live there with you.
Right. So it's divided into 4 sections. The Gerber House, which is that mansion I was telling you earlier, that was the first thing that was built, which, by the way, it was built in 1872. There was a chapel that was intended to be a temporary structure, but it stands today, and that's where the Children's Theater Workshop mostly practices out of. A theater wing, a dorm wing for the artists, and a studio wing. The basement is used for storage and also for laundry, and then the attic used to be the place where workrooms of the convent were located, and it was built in their earlier times. It wasn't air conditioned, but it was built to have a nice cross breeze. So when the heat rose, it would go out the windows instead of inflict everyone with horror.
Very much like in New Orleans.
We did talk about the Gerber House just a little bit. It's a 3-story Victorian mansion plus an attic and a basement. It's located in the front, so when people drive past it, the building that was built by E.O. Wallace is behind it on a sideways angle, but the first house that they see is the Gerber House. All of it is historically protected. It has a passageway that connects it from the basement to the art center behind. That's the huge one, 13,000 square feet.
What is it with the tunnels?
I know. There's a staircase from the second floor to the main building, which leads to the second floor of the Gerber House as well. It is a white painted brick mansion. Here's the thing about it. A local merchant, Christian Gerber, had spared no expense in trying to build this showcase. It's huge and it's gorgeous. It really is. It's really pretty, but his eyes were too big for his wallet. Elegant parlors, 15-foot high ceilings, solid walnut doors, ornate carvings, white marble Rococo fireplace mantles, walnut staircases. Like I said, it's gorgeous. Good job, Christian Gerber. Settle it down. So he had construction nightmares, and it cost about twice as much as he was planning on actually spending.
What?
So he had to stop building because he was overextending himself.
Twice?
Yeah. I mean, it happens.
For the amount of money that you think it's going to cost to build something, for it to then become twice.
Unfortunately, at the time that he realized he was overexerting himself with his finances, the city of Toledo was starting to suffer from an economic slowdown. And because he was a merchant and he was based out of Toledo, that affected his costs.
Yeah.
So he eventually ended up declaring bankruptcy. A lot of people had lived there after he had stopped building on the property and after, obviously, he had declared bankruptcy. But it was eventually bought by the Ursuline Order of the Sacred Heart.
Ooh, Ursuline.
When the Ursuline nuns had purchased this area, they eventually had restored it to its former glory and then took up residence. Now it's used mostly for art exhibitions and small conferences, with it sitting a little bit idle between the time of which they own the property and the art center came in. They are restoring it and apparently are also taking donations. So if you guys are real froggy and you want to preserve a historic and also artistic space, jump on that website. The parlors in the Gerber House are opened up for art exhibitions, conferences, weddings, etc. The entire campus features the Underground Theater, the Gerber House, the Lois M. Nelson Theater, and a lot of different studio spaces and galleries. They have partnerships with the Children's Theater. The Lois M. Nelson Theater has stained glass because, of course, it's going to be gorgeous.
Yeah.
I told you it's gorgeous. It has what's considered to be great acoustics. When the nuns were living there, they were utilizing it as a college. They were utilizing it as a school as well. So a lot of the old classrooms are either rooms for rent, which, like I said, question mark on that, but maybe it's a thing again. The old classrooms are now the studio wings. The most often cited that are running through the grounds are nuns because they lived there for about 80 years, either in the retirement area or in the Gerber House where they were taking up residence or being there to do the schooling.
It makes perfect sense.
It makes sense. They were there for a crazy amount of time,
Yeah.
of course. A lot of people think that some of the nuns that are still cited on the property were really attached to their convent work, and that's maybe why they aren't leaving the area.
Oh.
And they're there to support. But there's also been a couple sightings, and I'll get into it more heavily later, where the nuns almost seem angry that the artist community has taken over. The Maumee River is fairly close. In the 1870s, through the 1900s, people would dump their sewage into the river. I mean, there's no running water. I understand, dump it in a place. Unfortunately, because of that and because of the water supply also being used as a supply,
Oh, gross.
a lot of the people of Toledo had started suffering and eventually would die from typhoid fever and other waterborne diseases because no regulation on sewage.
Gross.
They built a treatment plant, but it was a little bit late in 1910.
Oh, I mean, after the typhoid.
It's 1800s.
Keep your poop to yourself.
Keep your poop to yourself. The owners of the property now have said, quote, if such paranormal activity exists, it merely adds to the unique flavor and ambiance of one of the largest and oldest structures in Toledo's historic Old West End. Having said that, there are dozens of reports from visitors, residents, and others that swear they've encountered the restless spirits in the building. A lot of paranormal enthusiasts keep popping back. Nuns, we found out because of a lot of different books that have been written. But we found out more recently because of books that have come out that are not as much tell-alls as they are trying to make sure that the community that does exist within nunneries also has the ability to show people that they also took all kinds.
Yeah.
A lot of people who would commit themselves to convents would do so to either avoid marrying because they didn't feel right marrying a man, or because they thought through marrying God, which is essentially what nuns do, that it would curb their sexuality.
And priests too,
Yes,
actually.
indeed, yeah.
Which I always thought was real fun.
In a lot of convents, the whole purpose is to get yourself to God. So they don't have a ton of worldly possession, and a lot of time they spend outside of prayer and outside of any of the services that they are going to is spent either in silence or solitary so they can reflect on their life. But there is a term that was attributed to possible lesbians that may have been within the convent walls, and that was either PF or particular friend, as in, are you bringing your particular friend to mass today?
I mean, seeing as everyone's probably going to be there, she's going to sit by me, yeah.
A lot of people feel either uncomfortable or like they're being watched as they're walking around the building. And this is not just when they're going through on paranormal tours, but if they're coming through just to view things, they feel like they're being watched and then realize that there's no one there. A lot of the hauntings, too, kind of seem, from what I'm reading, to be more residual hauntings than intelligent hauntings.
Okay.
But some of them...
It makes sense, 80 years, you know.
Yeah, some of them do see and interact with certain things.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to realize that intelligent hauntings and residual hauntings can exist in one space, and they frequently do.
Yeah, there's a woman that walks, and a lot of people note that she looks like she was dressed in a wedding gown. She often appears in the back and front parlors, and then will walk in between different rooms. She might be on the third and second levels. She had gotten pushed down the stairs, or she had fallen. And then there's another one still that says that she had maybe gotten hanged off of the base of the stairwell. There's no official note that she had died on the property, but a lot of people still see a woman wandering in a lot of the separate rooms, especially in the Gerber house, and or going up and down the stairwell. They think that she may have been one of the daughters of the families, and some people still, there's conflicting reports on it, think that she may have gotten sick from the bad river water and died before she was married.
I mean, that seems to make more sense to me than the hanging thing.
Right. There's
any word on where the hanging thing comes from?
One of the men that work there, they may understand that it's a wedding dress, but it may be a dress that she was wearing while she was in preparation to become a, quote, bride of Christ, like training nuns. But I don't know how you could mistake a habit or any of that for a wedding dress.
I guess I could kind of see that, though.
Some people also in the Gerber house hear happy children running through the hallways, so children's laughter, giggling, whispers, and a lot of people, they think that the reason that there's children running around in this house is because they were there during the typhoid epidemic.
And the nuns were torturing them and beating them.
And the nuns were taking care of them because they're nice. FYI, I've read too that in the Gerber house, people have seen shadow people running between the doors, but that also might be attributed to the bride walking in between the doors as well.
I don't like shadow people.
I know you don't. I always giggle when I read about shadow people because I know that you hate it. So we'll move on to the theater. I've heard two different accounts on this particular person. One of the women that used to attend school there had decided that this was probably Sister Marcella. She chills out in the back rows of the auditorium or the third row of the balcony, stage left, which was her favorite seat. Some people say she is hate-filled. Performers on stage, when they're rehearsing or sometimes during their plays, have said that they've seen her glaring at them from her seat. From what this person wrote, which I thought was the funniest thing, quote, her ghostly peanut gallery. Like I said, I've read that she's not always super mean or scolding looking from this woman specifically, and that sometimes she's seen either as herself or hooded, because it's Ohio and there's weather, in a hooded cloak, but always sitting in the same sort of area.
Yeah, I mean...
Sometimes if she feels as though people are invading her space, she's been known to throw sparks and ugly images into their brain. So they'll see things that make them feel uncomfortable so that they leave. Chris Woyard, who wrote a book, Haunted Ohio 3, says that she's so full of hate that it, quote, radiates from her face and eyes when she turned her ashen face toward Chris. Besides, in her balcony seat, she's seen wandering the halls and cells of the same convent. So here's the thing. When I read cells, I was like, well, is this a prison? No. They just called them themselves, they're very small areas that a lot of either nuns practiced in or were used as additional housing. A resident was minding her own business and was getting her soda from the machine when what she considered to be a, quote, molecular windstorm appeared in the middle of the hallway. It went right through her, and she felt enraged for several minutes and then ice cold. She felt as though an oppressive presence had pushed on her when she reached the center and then put pressure on her back, causing her to hunch her shoulders. In the attic, a spirit of a loving nun with a huge and bright smile and is super friendly, smells and waves at the living. She apparently likes to spend her time sewing clothes and then possibly finishing projects, enjoying her work for the Lord. The basement is haunted by 1 to 3 what they assume are scary entities.
Are they like shadow figures or what?
There's a couple different